Welcome back to the Start-Up Saga, where we explore the founder's journey from spark to scale. In today's episode, we're diving into a phase where many great products either break through or break. It's called developing a go-to-market strategy. This is the moment where ideas meet reality, where positioning, sales, pricing, and execution determine whether a product truly reaches the audience it was built for. To help us unpack this, we're joined by someone who brings a refreshingly grounded perspective to go-to-market, Tim Dröscher. Tim didn't start his career in sales or marketing. He comes from a mechanical engineering background and spent several years in the German manufacturing industry, working on strategy and the implementation of digital processes across automotive enterprises and mid-sized companies. It was through the pool of the startup world and a few very convincing founders that Tim eventually made the move to the Berlin startup world. From there, he transitioned from operations into building go-to-market and sales teams from the ground up. Over the years, Tim has worked with SMEs and B2B tech and SaaS startups across very different stages of growth, from funding through Series A and beyond. What makes his perspective especially valuable is that he understands go-to-market not as theory, but as execution, aligning product, sales, and customer reality, often in very complex industrial and B2B environments. In this conversation, we talk about how founders can think clearly about their target audience, avoid common go-to-market traps, build sales and growth that actually fit the product rather than forcing one that looks good on a slide deck. If you're a founder wrestling with how to take a strong product to market or wondering why traction hasn't followed yet, this episode is for you. Before we jump in, we prepared something you might find valuable. We created a free library of resources related to every episode in the Startup Saga founder journey. These resources are created by our guest speakers, and they will offer you practical support in your journey. Make sure you subscribe to the resource library on the link from the show notes. Let's jump in.
Nice talking to you. Thank you so much for joining us on the Startup Saga. We're just going to dive straight in to the questions, no messing about. So let's start.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Happy to be here. Looking forward to chatting with you guys.
Good. So how do you personally define go-to-market in the deep tech space? Mm-hmm. And what distinguishes a truly great GTM from just an okay one?
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of definitions out there, but looked at a lot of them. And I think for me personally, go-to-market is a framework, like a systematic approach, first of all, to achieve product market fit. And with product market fit, it gives safety and security for the founders to scale sales and to ultimately scale the company. So it's kind of the path to unlock growth, in my opinion. And when I think about these frameworks, I think there are three aspects to what makes a go-to-market system really great. First of all, I think it must be really a framework, because let's take product market fit very literal, because it needs to match a product to a market. And when you start very early, of course, you have one product and you go in one market. But the framework needs to be able that when you launch a product into a new country or a completely different market. I remember when we went with our predictive maintenance solution in the US, entering the US market was completely different to Europe. And so the go-to-market framework needs to provide that flexibility. And the second part, I think, is that you have a stage approach towards product market fit. And I know there are also different perspectives out there, but I think what they all very much have in common is I define there's three stages to achieve product market fit with your go-to-market strategy. And the first one is kind of the problem solution fit. So to answer the question, is there a problem pattern and can you solve it? That is kind of the first step. And that is usually at the very beginning, the hustle mode, the very trying to figure it out and going left and right and mini pivots and so on. And then when you have the problem solution fit, then comes the second phase. Maybe you can call it the focus phase, where you, or very often the business model fit, where you're like, okay, I can solve the problem, but do I find customers who are willing to pay enough money for the solution that I can have a profitable and sustainable business at some point? That's the second part. And then you have the third one, which is then the product market fit phase. And product market fit, I think the best like not technical description is like repeatable happy customers. And that means in the product market phase, you need to show that you can repeat your process, you can repeat your lead generation, you can repeat your sales process, have it effectively, that you can repeat that and have then a few customers, and to achieve kind of your whatever, like your goal is 500 to 1 million ARR, whatsoever, what your business model calls for. And you have the three stages. And then the third aspect is, I think, what has really the truly great go-to-market. At all these aspects of a go-to-market strategy or a playbook, however you want to call it, you have the product market fit approach, but then you have these things like all the lead generation system, like your go-to-market motion. So you do your product-led sales, sales-led sales, marketing-led sales. You define that. Then you have your sales pipeline, your sales funnel, how the customer journey goes, the customer success, how to upsell and resell your customers, and all these aspects. And they need to have in common that they have the human at its core. Empathy needs to be at the core of the go-to-market system, and AI should only be kind of the supportive thing around it. And I think that is what you see, to make like very, very clear examples, like when you have like machine operators or service technicians at the core of your go-to-market, where you want to reach these people with your solution. It needs to be a completely different situation or different model than, for example, if you want to reach startup founders. And you need to consider that in all aspects of your go-to-market system. And I think there's really now what distinguishes a good from a great go-to-market system.
Fantastic. Tell me, what's the one go-to-market myth you want every founder to forget?
A myth that there's an easy way out, that there's an easy way to do it, that there's some kind of LinkedIn post where you can just like copy and implement it, or to outsource it. I mean, there are like fantastic go-to-market agencies out there. I think people who really know the game, and with all this go-to-market engineering, there's a lot of great content out there. But I think as the founding team, you have to go through it yourself. Like all these hustle mode at the beginning, the problem solution fit, you need to learn that. And that is the myth, that there's any kind of easy way to do it, to outsource it. You need to go through it yourself.
There's no shortcuts, are there? And in speaking to other founders through the course of this podcast and through our experience, one thing that's, a common thread is that closeness to the customer, especially in the early stages, is absolutely critical to be able to evolve and learn and improve. And so, no shortcuts is definitely the common theme that we get. And in your experience, especially with SaaS and enterprise tech, what are the biggest pitfalls that founders fall into when they first plan market entry?
Yeah, I think exactly what you just said, like the closeness to the customer is, I thought, because also living then in this bubble, for me, that's kind of very clear, but to not be close to the customer, to have that you need like a full demo, that you need an MVP, you need already build your product before you're going to go to the market. I think the biggest problem is when you try to develop something and then go to the market. I think go-to-markets, if you do it right, go-to-market starts already with your idea, because ultimately the market is gonna shape your idea more than you can shape it yourself if you do it right. And this customer closeness will define it more than your idea. It's the pull from the market. And I know, I think many, especially now when I see the AI tech scene, I think some founders are really like, I want to build a cool AI product. But if you don't develop it close to the customer, you don't know if it's going to work. And I really thought it's kind of like, when you're in the bubble, it's common knowledge. But I had a few weeks ago, like an interview with a founder, and I think she developed, she was super smart, had played the game. And she also told me the story that a few years ago, when they developed the product, they developed features, but half a year later they released it and no one used the features. And that is kind of why I still think it's important to convey this message. And I have kind of internally developed this rule, I would say, that there's no development, no feature development without a clear customer demand, or at least from a customer. It's difficult to say. I also don't think you need to make 10 customer interviews for every single feature. I think there's a lot of clear things, but you should not just go with assumption. You should have validated it at least at some point.
You touched upon AI there, and I wonder if in the next question that I'm going to ask, this might play a part, but how have go-to-market strategies evolved over the past few years?
I think when I look back, I think I started using the first proper sales and outreach tools around like 5 to 6 years ago. I used there the first LinkedIn automation, email automations. And I think what you can see is that this mass outreach became super cheap and affordable for everyone. I think now you can build like a tech stack for like 200 to 300 euros max, and you can send hundreds of thousands of emails and LinkedIn messages around. And then I think it's almost funny to see how all these communication platforms, like also the email providers like Google and Microsoft, and also especially LinkedIn. And then on the other side, the kind of the tools, the tool developers for the sales tools, how they fight, how extremely smart this game becomes, because like you see now all these tricks of like email warm up. You see like the same matching email provider with the email addresses. They always find ways of like how to reach the inbox better, how to get in the inbox, and how to have little spam. And I think this what you then saw is that, for example, LinkedIn, they reduced the amount, like step by step, they decreased the amount of allowed connection requests and so on. Because I see that the bad thing that happened over the last years, because mass outreach got so cheap, everyone is doing it, and the inboxes are flooded for everyone. And I think it is a certain point where it gets annoying. And I'm happy that over the last years, like the kind of the signal and intent got more attention to make outbound more not only efficient but also effective. And there's a huge difference. And but now even like the simple signaling is getting like kind of like is already over, kind of, for example, if there's like, I saw the inboxes from founders, like when they announced like a funding round or so, like seed round raise, like you can like within 3 days, like all the same emails coming out, because also building this motions, like you scrape that, you can use these tools like Clay and so on. It's super simple. You track that, you get instantly the notification. You can like enrich individual emails within the JetGPT integration, and then maybe with N8N, or also you build your workflows to HubSpot, and you can directly send out from your inbox the messages. And they all sound they're all individual, they're all personalized, but they all sound kind of the same. Slowly. And I think that's now, we're probably going to talk later about more in detail, like how also the future now looks. But this is now kind of, I think, the moment when like first AI experiments are coming, how to personalize more and how to make it more effective. And this is kind of, I think, interesting to see right now.
I wonder with all of this, because I remember, when I first started in sales 20 years ago, we didn't have any of these sorts of automations. And, in fact, I didn't even have a database or a CRM system, really. I had a folder with paper in it. And, I was given, okay, these are your clients. I had to call them, and I wonder whether, because inboxes are so flooded now with emails, whether, actually the old school becomes the new school, where actually just getting on the phone and talking to people is going to be the big part of everybody's go-to-market strategy in the future.
Yeah, the latter, I think. I think the personal communication now I had again, or what we did back in the days, is writing handwritten cards on Christmas to customers and leads. I think this is still something I can recommend. I think this personal message is amazing. And Nick, when you said like the calling, I think this is also like, because cold calling is also such a big topic always, like how see people, how they fight over how they do cold calling and the best scripts. I think I move completely to warm calling. Now with all the tools, you can like automatically send LinkedIn connection requests, send messages, send an email, and then pick up the phone, make in your sequence a task, it pops up in your CRM, and you call them and you be like, hey, I sent you a message. I saw you opened it already. So was there something interesting? So I think calling can be much more effective now if you do it right in the go-to-market. Even though I still think, depending, and that's what I said with putting the human at the center, it might be in some industries, and depending on who you want to reach, that cold calling still might be a cool idea. Because, for example, service technicians, they're always on the road, they're always in the car, they're driving in their car. So maybe service technicians are actually a brilliant ICP to reach them just by cold calling. You might get them in the phone, they have time, they're happy to chat. So this still can be like a cool idea. It really depends who you want to reach.
Yeah, I think we're going to go back to writing letters and knocking on doors and making phone calls on the landline. All right.
Well, yeah, you have to do it on the landline now because Apple will pre-screen the calls. If you've got an iPhone now and you call an iPhone, you have to tell them why you're calling. So, calling landlines is maybe the way forward.
Yeah.
All right.
In the industry, you do it. I think in the industry, like in the manufacturing, like more traditional industries, like calling the landlines or the secretaries or the service desk, like it's still a way to go.
And Tim, let's talk a bit about how can someone identify their ideal early customer segments. How would you approach that, or what do you see from your past experience?
Yeah. At the beginning, of course, market definition. And I think usually that's quite clear because you have had an idea how you found something. So you know in kind of which space it is. But then how you narrow it down is what I said at the beginning. At the beginning is the problem solution hypothesis. And you go in with your problem hypothesis. You think what you think is the problem and what you think is the solution. And then based on that, you pick the right leads or customers and try to talk to them and especially listen. I think listening I think listening is a virtue in some point. And I think listening is also the bridge to real empathy when you really understand the customer and really ask the right question, go deeper, what they have for a true pain. Because there's this saying, when you really understood the problem, you got 90% of the solution, and I think this is really true in here. And then you iterate fast. Then you get this feedback when you understand more the problem and you think better what your solution can be. You iterate fast, and that is really a constant iteration process. And don't get frustrated, especially in big enterprise sales. This might take months. Yeah, this is not like a weekly sprint or something like that. It can take months. I remember in my previous role, I worked there with a very, I think, brilliant founder who's like very strong on the customer side. And I started as the first employee after the two founders. And I was like, okay, let's talk to the customers and let's figure out how we build our product and MVP. And then he showed me a list of 30 to 40 interviews already with industry experts. And I was like, I did that over the last months already. And still we needed another, I think 2, 3, 4 more months of talking to customers and more narrowed down and get this narrowed down really where to start and where's the right use case and what is the most promising industry. And it might take really a few months depending on your solution. The more complex it is, the more ACV, I think that the longer it will take to find the right customer.
It's so interesting what you said. And I think so much of this is true also for B2C. We have now an equestrian health company, and we actually got to understand the segment and the main use case, so to speak, what use case means in B2C through doing the unscalable thing for 8 years, working very closely with the customer, talking with them on a day-to-day basis. And you start to notice a pattern and the product and a solution or service that can be actually scaled through that. So it was very interesting. It's healthcare, right? So it's not everything can be scaled through healthcare, but this is equine healthcare, and education is so key. I'm super interested in this go-to-market topic also from a personal angle, because we are in the midst of it right now and also trying to test, validate, and everything before building the product. It's very exciting.
Yeah, no, I look now only in the B2B space, but I truly believe that at the end it's the same humans, the same people behind it. So I think these approaches can be equally valid in B2B and B2C.
I think one difference is that in B2B you don't pay with your own money, and in B2C you pay with your own money, and that's one thing I had to understand, that that's a very crucial difference in when you're validating a service or a product. It was very cool. I'm also in the B2B space with my coaching work, but with this other thing, just exploring the B2C world. So exciting.
Yeah, curious to see what you can implement and take from.
Absolutely, there's so much overlap in my opinion.
Good experiment.
So going back to your early go-to-market experiments or experience also, how do you choose which channels to start with? And how do you set expectations for yourself?
I think the channels will become clear at the end of a really good B2B marketing strategy, which is entailed in your go-to-market strategy.
Wait, say this again. How it will...
You cannot start with the channels. The channels will be the natural outcome after you had implemented a great B2B marketing strategy, which is part of the go-to-marketing, part of the go-to-market marketing strategy, part of the go-to-market. And here's the same: you don't start where I want to communicate. You start first with the targeting. Who's my target audience? Who do I want to address? What person is there? Yeah, do I want to call the startup founder? Or do I want to reach the service technician in the car on the highway? And then the second part is you need to think about your positioning. How do you want to position yourself? How do you want to be perceived from your customer? And when you know that, you have the third point. What is then actually the message you want to say? Like, do you want to educate? Do you want to bring excitement? Like, what is the message you want to bring to your customer? And when you really thought these things through, I think then at the end, the channels become very clear. So imagine again, you want to be in the manufacturing industry. You want to be like an industrial expert, like an engineering mindset. Probably then the channel, the right thing is like doing a webinar or like doing a roundtable or interviews or this kind of like exclusive topics. And if you want to rather reach like a wider area, also like B2C style, then maybe TikTok, Instagram, maybe also for B2B, Instagram, TikTok. It really depends before like who you want to reach and with what message. And then the channels, I think, become very clear. I think when it's very difficult, it might be a good start to analyze your competitors. This could be also an idea to see where they are very successful, where they bring, if they have like really high subscriptions on their Instagram accounts, on their YouTube channels. This might be good to do the competitor analysis, but I think in general this becomes very clear if you go the step-by-step approach, which channel then makes sense where you reach.
So you have to know your ICP first very well. Then the channel reveals itself.
Yeah, I think so. And I think in a majority of the cases it becomes quite clear when you go through the step-by-step process and think this through and put yourself in the shoes of your customer. Like for example, the machine operator or the production engineer in a production facility, very often they don't have even an email address. Yeah, very often they have just a phone and running around with that, and when you know that about these people, then you can then you know at the end which channels are clear. Or like fighting for attention in a founder's inbox. It's I think that's maybe like founders, they have these events here, especially in Berlin. They're like every week is somewhere startup events, and fighting for the best messaging in the email or LinkedIn probably you reach a little bit more attention when you see them at a personal event, like one of these startup fairs and so on, and grab their like 2 minutes of their attention. Maybe then is the event channel, the right one. But you only understand the channel if you understood the person before.
And I have the feeling proximity is key. You can't do everything remotely. It's very difficult.
No.
Have you ever had this experience that you chose to go with one channel and then it completely flopped? And if yes, did you learn something from it that you want to share with our audience?
I have an example, but it wasn't completely flopped. It was probably one of my biggest learnings in the industrial space when we tried to sell the predictive maintenance solution and use the channel of partner sales. And partner sales, because in the industry as well, as you try to understand the industry, and the industry, especially manufacturing, they work a lot with service companies. This partner network is very big in the industrial space. So partner sales, resellers via partners is very common and very known for the end customer as well. And we had a really good partner manager. She was, I think, absolutely right for the job. I think the biggest learning we had was that maybe we started too early because partner sales, the channel of taking partners in, is something that needs to be really well thought through. And I realized like that was biggest learning. I didn't at least do that so well because selling via partners requires so much extra effort, and I definitely not before product market fit. And I think even like way after that, when your own sales feels like easy and the customers kind of pull the product out of your hand, then I think it's only the time to think about partner sales, because like it multiplies the effort for the sales, because you need to educate your partner. You need to constantly have the communication, because for your partner, maybe your sales makes only 1%. So he pays only 1% of attention to your product and the customer feedback. And so managing the partners is a lot of effort, and it needs to really, on the cost benefit ratio, needs to be a good equation. And that is the biggest learning about the channels, what I had.
Thanks for sharing that. I think in the B2C, it's the affiliates. That's the partners. I feel like jumping right into it,
same.
But I'm putting it aside to later, maybe next year. When things are running.
If you're not on point with your own like sales, with your sales, let's say, marketing, if you're not on point with that yet, and you're not super clear about the use cases and who to address how, and you have really a running engine, running revenue engine, like be careful with partners. And then if you start very careful.
Evolving that discussion a little bit further, once you've got those early users, how do you start to build your funnel, from the point of awareness to evaluation to conversion in a way that is scalable?
Early users. I think, again, first of all, like don't overestimate your product or go to market only because of early users. That's like, still be careful. I mean, of course, celebrate it. It's amazing because you get like user data and you can ask different questions. It's amazing. But don't overestimate them. And I think what is important is that when you get the early users, you also analyze where they come from and in which niche they are, because that is kind of what is very common around, I would say, the GTM engineering scene. Once you found your niche, only scale in that niche and make your niche bigger, because then you can also, your messaging and positioning can be more targeted. And what you just also said is your ICP, and this is kind of also my biggest learning, or like what I did differently or understood about the market. The ICP, it's usually your ideal customer profile, and it's mostly in your niche. When you say like, oh, I found my niche, my ICP is that. I noticed that this is very often not enough, especially when the product is more complex. And so the ICP is usually just firmographics data, it's static data. And I learned that from my go-to-market experiments when I tried the campaigns and messaging that didn't work. And so I needed to figure out what else is there that helps me to find the right messaging, the right positioning, and build a funnel. And so I developed a concept which is then not called ideal customer profile, which is the ideal use case, because the customer journey only starts with real pain, with urgent pain. Then the customer journey starts. And pain doesn't come from static situations, it comes from dynamics. So something is moving. And so what we did was not just like firmographics of like, okay, you need to be in this industry, have like 200 people, and you needed to make 2 million revenue, then you are ICP. That's very often not enough. And so we described the ideal use case more precisely. So what is usually the pain point which is coming with this person? So, and what is this person doing to come out of this pain? And then you very quickly evolve in the whole signal and intent, which I think is then the right step to evolve. And then you go into this niche, which you have defined, and try to get there the TAM, the total addressable market, and measure all the signals and intent in this market. And that is, I think, a smart step to do in the first moment after you have your first niche, because then you can measure all these signals, which reflect much more the dynamics of the market and not only static data. That's really helped me.
I think that's really, really interesting, because one of the things that I've seen over the years working with companies that are university spin-outs, technical founders, for example, is that if you look at a website, of a company like that, what you'll see is product features all the time, selling, how great their product is, how great their software solution is. And, I think that kind of role of use case is quite often missed for those type of companies. So in your experience, what sort of role did content, case studies, proof of concepts play in accelerating trust and sales?
So I think there it also depends who you want to address. I think, of course, it's most credibility part. I don't think you see any kind of message where there's no like customer section or testimonial section, and I think it became kind of standard. I would say on a surface level, to make like the first visualization of that great, a good example is Clay, how they do it. I personally like it. Maybe they have different opinions, but they really show like their customer logos and then with whom they have a case study. So you look at it and they're like, oh, there's a lot of trust. You feel a lot of trust when you look at that. But when you go, I think that works a lot in the software space and in the B2B software space. But when you go like in more with the higher ACVs, with more enterprise sales, you need to have very industry specific content and nail it down, because when the customers, I think especially in the industry space, they always feel that their process and their production is unique, which is very often also the case. But you cannot like push this effort to your customer that he needs to do this transfer work in his mind, that this use case you have in the case study that somehow fits to his production and his use case. So then it's all this explanation. And I think when you have found your niche and you can like adapt your positioning and especially like speak their language, that is, I think, crucial in that you know the technical terms, you know your way around this area when you want to sell, and you can talk with a technical person like on a deep level. And then you need to also narrow down all your case studies and testimonials as really right fits into the pain point and to the problem space with the right wording. And I think that helps then really gain trust. But don't expect to make a generic case study and like send it out and you get like thousands of inbound leads. I don't think that's very, very well happening.
Quick pause for a moment to mention one of our founding sponsors for the Start-Up Saga podcast, Alexander Daniels Global. At Alexander Daniels Global, we work closely with founders, scale-up leaders and investors to help build leadership teams at the moments that matter the most. One of our key focus areas is C-suite and leadership search within technology, deep tech and innovation-driven businesses, often at points of rapid growth, transition or uncertainty. Over the years, I've had the privilege of partnering with founders as they make some of the hardest decisions in their journey, who to trust early, when to strengthen leadership, and how to bring in the right people to turn vision into execution. We work alongside investors, helping ensure the teams behind their portfolio companies are set up to scale sustainably. At its core, Alexander Daniels Global is about helping companies build teams that don't just look good on paper, but actually work. Teams that can navigate complexity, pressure, and growth without losing their direction. To find out more, you can visit our website at alexanderdanielsglobal.com. I'm going to take a slight tangent now, not necessarily in line with where we were, but you've mentioned clay a couple of times throughout the conversation, and I'm just wondering, because I think this would be really useful for our listeners. There are so many different tools out there that you can use to support you from a go-to-market standpoint, and I think for a lot of founders, who might be on that journey, and it's founder-led sales to begin with, can be overwhelmed by a tech stack that is complicated. And, I think most founders will be conversant with something like HubSpot, for example, as a CRM. But then you've mentioned Clay. We use Apollo. There's, other tools like Lemlist, for example, out there. So Zoom Info, there's loads. So Tim, slight tangent, but give, if you can, the listeners an idea of, the sorts of tools that maybe are worth exploring, that are, invaluable in a go-to-market.
Yeah. That's hard for me to give there any clear. I have no affiliations or anything like that. So first of all, it's pure experience based. Where do I start with that? I think first of all, of course, in the middle of your sales is a CRM system. And I actually it's funny because I had yesterday a lunch with the other founder, and we talked about HubSpot and how to use the CRM. And I think don't overestimate what you need at the beginning from a CRM, especially when you think about Salesforce and HubSpot. I mean, the functionalities, the feature set is insane. It's like Excel. You probably at the beginning use only like 2% of the features. I think to have a CRM early makes sense to have all the data documented. This is, I think, super important. And then to go in the front, I don't like to say like, oh, this is the best tool, or to just like give advice without knowing what their go-to-market is. Because when you look at this, what we just described at the beginning, like how a go-to-market system, a framework is structured. So at the beginning, you think about, do I want to do sales-led sales? Do I want to do marketing-led sales? Do I want to be more inbound focused or outbound focused? Yeah, you do your go-to-market matrix. How big is your ACV? Do you want to do low touch, high touch with customers? And all of this will lead you how your lead generation system looks like. And I always think in capabilities. Yeah, you need a capability along this whole process. For example, you need website tracking. You need, for example, multi-channel outreach tool. Yeah, you need capabilities. And then you look not what is the best tool, but with what tool can I have the best coverage of the capabilities I need. So because if you have 8 or 9 capabilities along your whole sales journey, then you can, if you only find the best tool for this specific capability, you end up with 8 tools. And I saw the other day a post of there are 2,000 sales tools out there. Yeah, who should it's really it's insane. I mean, I would consider myself, I looked out for a lot of these sales tools and booked also demos and just curious what's out there in the market. But even I get overwhelmed. It's like, what is the right what is the right tool? So I would always not recommend one tool, which is the best. I mean, they're good out there, but go from the other way around. What do you need? Which capabilities do you actually need? And then look which tools have the biggest coverage of these capabilities and also the best integrations between each other. These native integrations, I think, that are the key, the foundation to having good automated revenue engine later.
Yeah, sorry to digress a little bit there. I just thought it's a topic that I'm sure a lot of founders and a lot of kind of people developing go-to-market inside organizations are facing every day. So I think looking at it from the lens of what do we need, is probably the best way to determine that.
Absolutely.
All right, let's talk a little bit about growth signals and metrics and positioning. That's also a very interesting topic here. In your view, what are the leading indicators that your go-to-market is working, especially in the early stage?
Especially in the early stage, there I learned a little time ago about the concept of date wow and marry wow. And this is kind of the wows you want to create in customers. And I think it's a very simple concept, but very, very true. When you start the customer journey, you get like the lead at the beginning. Somehow you luckily, or like with signals, you found that the customer has a pain you might solve. And then this concept is you want to create a date wow, which kind of is then to get the second date. And then you have the marry wow afterwards, which like helps you get into the long-term contract. And I think this perspective on the date wow and the marry wow is super interesting, because you want to create this wow. And it can be at the beginning, like it can be a lead magnet, it can be a Loom video of your product within 1 minute, like something, whatever fits what you think is good. And then on the marry wow, there becomes like more important of like personal interaction, of like a personalized demo. I had this week where we looked into different software tools. They prepared the demo and had the logo and the icon already into their dashboard. So our logo in the dashboard and the favicon in the top browser side. And it was like these small things, when you create, oh, this is effort, that these simple things, it takes probably like 3 minutes, but it made you feel like a different thing. And there was a little wow, and I feel like I made this wow. And once, because we also record our calls with Fathom, and we can watch the videos, and sometimes you see when you show them a personalized demo, and there's really like this wow, and you can really see that in the eyes when like the eyebrows raise, and then like, yes, I got the merry wow. And I think this concept is great. The best indicator, though, that your go-to-market is working are referrals. At the end, when you go a little bit more alongside, when you along the journey, you can do that with the early users or first customers, and to ask maybe at the end, maybe sometimes in sales calls, you can do that already in the beginning. At the end, it's a super good question to ask, like, hey, who else would you say like is even as knowledgeable as you in this space and would also benefit from our solution? I think that's a great question, because you see instantly in their reaction, first of all, if they are convinced, if they are already like, oh yeah, I know, they start thinking directly, who else? It's a good sign. And if they really, because then they have skin in the game, if they really give like a personal name, no one, they have skin in the game. And that's where you see like if this person is really convinced about your solution. And if you think about that yourself, you would also only recommend a tool where you would say like, yeah, I like to use it, it's a good tool, it helped me. And you would only recommend those to other your friends or colleagues.
How many people do you think ask this in a call?
It's I think it's a really good question. I think myself sometimes I forget this question as well. It really needs to have a little bit timing, and you need to already have also like kind of a relationship with this person, that there needs to be a certain level of trust to be able to ask that question. You don't do that in the first call or so. So you need to have also the right timing to ask.
Okay, so this is especially in the early stage, but what about if the business is more mature? How do you reinterpret or discard certain metrics that maybe you used in the beginning?
Yeah, at the beginning, I would say, especially metrics, I wouldn't say don't worry too much. What I think is even more important is to document the data, to have that right from the beginning. For example, churn reasons, to have that all documented. That is super important. Your sales cycles. That's why I think you need a CRM early with not all the functions, but you document all this data so that when you change or enter new markets, you have comparison, you have data, how your sales cycle changed, and so on. So kind of there's core metrics. But what I think when you evolve the business more, they are like in the SaaS business, I think the net user retention and net revenue retention, I think they're still like kind of very good ones. what I would recommend is always do, depending where you are with your niche or market segment, make a net revenue retention calculation always based on your market segments which you have, so you can more control in which market segments you are growing and where not. What you read very often in terms of metrics is this customer acquisition cost and customer lifetime value. I also dig deep in that and try, but you can go into like an own rabbit hole how to really calculate your own customer acquisition costs and customer lifetime value, and you need already a lot of data to really make a statistical valid calculation. So I would say you need at least, like, depending on the business, 3 to 4 years until you have really solid data that you can calculate it, because beforehand there's not so much data that you can make. It could lead to false assumptions, and I want to avoid that, because it is very much gut feeling, and you focus on your few customers at the beginning. So yeah, what I think is still important is like when you do outreach, the campaigns, you measure your campaigns and how these campaigns work, because at the beginning, I used very often like very small campaigns, maybe just like 50 to 100 leads, and test hypothesis. At the beginning, when you do the problem and solution hypothesis, you have a hypothesis that this is kind of your customer value proposition, and so you write the customer value proposition in the headline and in the text, and say like, okay, I test it now with 50 leads and see how the response is. And then I always recommend to do A/B testing based on what you want to figure out in these campaigns. I think these metrics are important because it gives you direct feedback, very quick feedback, what is working in your go-to-market and whatnot.
Right. And how do you balance the competitive threats when you enter a market where there are existing players? So do you have any examples where your positioning or your differentiation was a good lever that pushed you forward, or with the companies that you were in?
Yeah, especially fighting against the big players. I think that's one of my I kind of love it and I hate it at the same time.
Spill
because yeah, it's like, I mean, the disclaimer, I for example lost deals against Siemens, and you're like, it's just these moments when your client tells you like, yeah, we decided to go for Siemens because it's more safe for us, and you just want to close the laptop and go home. It's so depressing. But yeah, I think especially when you say threats, it's a super powerful word, and I think the reason why I sometimes lost against competition is when you're threatened by them. And it sounds now very naive maybe a little bit, but even if the incumbents, the big ones, don't see them as competition, like they are not competition for you, because when you see them as when you enter this playing field with the big ones, and you start with feature comparison, and you start with you on a rational level, you're going to lose in all matters. Like probably they can go give more discounts, probably they have more experience, they have better use cases, they have bigger feature sets. You're going to lose on a rational level. So if you enter this arena, you lose. So you need to go on a different playing field. And what is the difference to rationals? It's emotions. And I think you need to play the game on the emotional field, because ultimately, when your buyer, your customer decides for a startup, it's more anyway on the emotional level. They're gonna buy your vision. They're gonna buy what they feel, the innovation that when they go with you. And I had one example just a few weeks ago when I had a lead. She was the assistant of the managing directors, and she was the responsible for the project, and she had like 6 other tools she looked at and us, and so I did a lot of effort and invested a lot of time. I always say big teams win by reputation, small teams win by preparation, and so like putting a lot of effort in there and building a connection. And then there was the call where she was like, she had the requirements list on one screen and me on the other screen. And she was like, so you guys, I remember you have this, check. Okay. And so she went with me and kind of like checked all the boxes. And because we have established this relationship already, and it was clear. And so for me, it was like for me, on every requirements list, there's kind of this invisible requirement at the end, which no one sees. And that is like, do I trust and do I like this
Absolutely.
person? And this is the most important checkbox on every requirement. And you can win this one as a startup. You cannot win the other ones. You, as a startup against ones, you're gonna lose it. And I think who did that very well, like, because always examples from the sales space, I think who did that very well was Attio, the AI native CRM tool. And of course, like on a feature level, no one wins against like HubSpot or Salesforce. Like they're gonna lose it. And they did like ad campaigns. I remember like digital and physical ads, and they were all emotion based, like how you feel using the tool, like all the magic that comes with the tool. And like I think one was like from zero to IPO, like kind of this, like selling a dream, selling a vision. And I think they did it very smart, because like honestly, like against HubSpot, and I used both tools, like of course on the feature level, no one can compete against their HubSpot, I think they're, or Salesforce on the big thing, but they took the fight like on a different playing field. And this is how I think you should deal with the big players, especially like outside towards the customers. And I think when I think about these where I lost against Siemens, it's still bugging me. And I think there's also another psychological aspect of it, because when you really see them as a threat, and your customers like, hey, so how do you compete against Siemens? And you really take them as a threat, I think that manifests also inside of you. I think that affects how you respond, how your body language is, how your facial expression is. And I think people notice that when you ask someone about the competition, and their body language changes, and they get like kind of, they lean forward and they're like kind of getting aggressive, like there's competition. I think that doesn't give trust to the person. You should like lean back and say like, oh, interesting, but this is a completely different route you want to go, apparently. So we are something completely different, and you don't like go into this fight. You take it on a different level. And I think that's the way you can like deal with the threats.
Do you think...
I'd really like to just dive in here.
Okay, go
Sorry,
ahead.
if you don't mind. Just because you've touched upon something that I don't think we've really explored or covered so far in this conversation, which is the role people play in your go-to-market strategy. Because you just said it there, the relationship that you built with that assistant to the MD was probably a big determining factor in the success or likely success you would have in that. And this is a repeated conversation that I'm having at the moment with CROs, CSOs around people. And, you know, at the core of any go-to-market strategy, your account execs, your BDMs, whatever it might be, it's your team. And, you know, it's challenging. It's challenging to recruit those profiles. It's challenging to identify the type of profile you look for. So I don't know, Tim, in your experience of, you know, developing go-to-market strategy and building a team around that, what do you look for? What are the traits that you look for in your BDRs, in your account execs, that you think make them more likely to be successful?
I always personally ask myself at the end of each interview the question like, would I invite this person to a house party at my place? Or would I give this person my credit card number? These are kind of the two questions I asked at the beginning, because that means I really trust that person.
Yeah.
And I would like to be around with them. And when I think like, I mean, it's always personal, like how people connect with each other is like, it can be a wonderful, amazing sales person, and it might not click, that might be true. But when you want to build a team who really works together, I ask myself at the end of the question always these, at the end of the interview, always these questions.
And just expanding upon that a little bit, and again, it relates to the GTM strategy, but what do you think the most crucial hires are? You know, and what are the first hires you would make, you know, at the start to ensure that you can build that early traction?
First hires. Wow. It again depends on the go-to-market strategy. So if I would be on a more account-based sales, if I want to sell high ACVs to bigger companies, then I would try to find a salesperson who is like very strong into relationship building and like a very empathetic person. If I'm like more on the small ACV and want to really on the mass scale and do big sales with strong marketing, I would probably also look for some lower or little more, even little experience, but more on the GTM engineering side. So to be like more automation and more scaling and finding that. So I would really say it depends on the go-to-market, and that matches the next scaling pain what you're gonna have.
Mm. And just again on the people topic, one final question to sort of ask.
Yeah.
A number of the conversations that we've had with founders, there've been some debates, I think, about what do you hire first, because to start with, it's founder-led sales. And typically, if you're then really, got a reasonably strong product market fit, you're looking then to bring somebody in maybe at a more senior level to really build your go-to-market strategy. At what point do you bring in that more if you're a founder, at what point, or is there a trigger, where you think, okay, now's the time to bring in a VP sales, a CSO, a CRO type profile, Are there any advice you can give to founders around that, around timing of hiring that more senior person into the team?
I think when you as a founder have also this repeated success through the entire customer journey. Because I think when you hire too early, like an experienced person in your team, and he or she is then taking over, it might that this person is taking over too much of your experience that you still need to make. And I think part of this experience is not only closing the customers, it's like also developing the customers and like understanding what you need to do that the customers don't churn, what you need to do to bring this project from a pilot phase to a rollout phase. Again, it depends on the business model and the product, might be earlier, might be later, but that kind of not when you are like at top and you made your customer like to the internal hero, and your customer is kind of your advocate for you. And you have built this relationship and you went through this entire journey with your customer at least once, maybe even a few more times, and you can replicate it. And I think then it makes also it much more easy for this other person who's joining the team to train that person and to give them the advice what is important along the customer journey and to share that experience. Even if it's at the beginning, probably then still a lot. But as I said at the beginning, you need to go through the hustle yourself. At least once, twice, 3 times, even better, depends on the work which is per customer.
You shouldn't outsource certain things too early on.
I think this learning curve you should not outsource at the beginning. Neither to an agency nor to an employee.
Do you think these team members would benefit from coaching? The coaching on how you expect or how you want them to speak to your customers.
I think when you like, it's super important that the founding team is sharing this sharing this experience, which is then kind of coaching to really on the level, because when you then scale, when you say you have product market fit and you hire your team, the teams are growing. I think sharing this is super important, because I think all these founder stories, they become ultimately the company culture in a certain it's at the end founder stories. And when the team learns how you solved this difficult hustle phase, what you did and how you solved that problem together as a founding team, and it creates a lot of friction and it's super difficult phases, and you have to have inconvenient conversations. And when you talk about it openly, it's like then the new team members will pick that up, and they will pick up the company culture, and they will solve the problems then equally like you did. And that's why I think this coaching and telling the stories is super important when you hire.
I think one thing I've noticed is being approachable as a founder and saying early on that come to me and talk to me about your questions about the customers or how to talk to the customers. If you lock away yourself from that, and then you might miss out on a lot of things.
Yeah.
I think we're getting reasonably close to the end now. So we'd like to ask a few somewhat quick fire questions if we can now, Tim.
Good.
If a founder built something they believe is world class, but they feel stuck deploying it, what's the first step you'd tell them to take to get momentum?
Also difficult to tell the first steps, man. I don't want to go for the easy way. But when they can deploy it, so it means selling it. So I think then the root cause why the founder is stuck in this position, because he probably developed something not customer related. So that is, I think, the question what he needs to ask. Like I probably developed something. Do I know anyone who needs it? And I mean, then what I would recommend is, if it depends if it's a big problem, if kind of the company or people they depend on it, then take a day off and go in nature and sleep for 8 hours, and then hopefully the idea will come to you.
Go see some horses.
And if it's go do some horse therapy. I agree. And if it's a small problem, ask for help. Ask more experienced people for help. I think asking for help is always a sign of strength, and then asking other more experienced people, reach out.
We touched upon this a little bit earlier, but as the market evolves, enterprise, B2B tech, how do you see go-to-market strategies changing over the next few years?
Yeah, where did you pick up at the beginning? So I think the curve will continue with the signal and intent based to make personalization and individualization targeted on a customer at scale. Yeah, not this. I think that the volume will decrease. I hope, like for the sake of all of us, please decrease the volume of mass outreach to stop annoying people where there's no need. I hope that's going to happen, and at the same time, I hope it's going to be more targeted. And what I also, Nick, when you asked about also the tools, I think there will be also a major shift what I see right now in the tools. So I think you have, when we talked about the capabilities, so you have kind of the databases, so where you get the leads from, you have the signaling, you have the enrichment, you have the outreach. And I think all tools I currently use or monitor, they all like found one capability as the entry point, and now they increase the capabilities. Either they buy other tools and include those, or they develop themselves. So I think you see already like kind of the tools, Ample Market, I think in Germany, like Honey Sales is going in this direction. They want to be like a whole SDR, like an AI SDR, sales development representative, and like take everything what is happening before the CRM and move it into one tool. And I think there will be probably happening a lot of consolidation over the next years of these tools.
Yeah. That's a really interesting point that you just made there about this AI SDR, because I was talking to a client of mine, very early stage startup, and he was sort of saying that with AI coming in, the role of an SDR is changing. And actually, one of the biggest impacts that he sees is that you won't need an SDR in the future. And this was often an entry point for new talent into sales roles. And so he sees a problem coming 5, 6, 7 years down the line where companies will stop hiring SDRs because AI will do that. But then you won't have the pull through for those people that can step into strategic account execs, or grow into those roles. And so I don't know, what's your take on that? Do you see this as a challenge the industry is going to face as a result of AI?
Yeah. Super interesting perspective. I haven't thought that through, but I will definitely go on this go down this thought road. I very often, when I see this changes happening, I compare also the sales to the product team or development team. And now, even if like all this AI coding tools, Cloud Code and Cursor and so on are coming, also still developers are still needed. It's not the replacement. It's like enhancement of good people. So I think the SDRs will be still needed, because you need someone like kind of the go-to-market engineers, which is kind of this role is kind of merging together.
Mm.
I think you still need people who design these systems that work well, because I still think there needs to be a very good go-to-market system. There needs to be human intelligence at its core, and that also means that there's a human sitting, because the AI won't understand, at least not now, what I'm seeing, like why a founder is actually rejecting your mail, or what might happen, and see all this context together, like no matter how much context you try to put into the AI. And I think you still need the human intelligence to build a super good AI system around,
Makes
because it's
sense.
still around people. And I believe there will be at some point agents buying from agents. Yeah, when you book a hotel, for example, this might happen that in a few like months there's like an agent buying like a hotel room when you do a business trip. But when it's about like if your company depends on it, and your success for your team, they will still be making human these decisions, and they will feel more comfortable also buying from humans. And then you need to have someone who understands, has the empathy to understand these buying decisions.
Good.
Right.
But interesting thought experiment. Yeah, I will think about that more.
Do we still have time for a few more questions? Yeah.
Yes, I have time.
Because you also mentioned
What's in your
product and other teams. I wonder, how do you create alignment across product, engineering, sales, marketing during a go-to-market phase, so that they don't all just go in their own direction, which can happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think it is partially what I mentioned already. It's because at the very early stage, it is the go-to-market is happening in the founder team, because there's all these functions like sales, engineering, marketing. This is all combined in like 2, 3, or 4 founder heads together, and then to have this alignment is, yes, I said, like you need then, as soon as you hire the teams, and then like more opinions and more things, it gets more automation, and you need to, as a founder team, exhibit to your team how you solve these problems and how you created this alignment in the first place. So what worked for you, was, and it also, I think there's also no best practice. It really depends on the founder team. Some are more like communicative in the communication strength, so they maybe do like a weekly alignment. There are some other ones who manage themselves with OKRs or whatever, but it needs to be like how the company wants, as a culture, as a team, wants to solve it, to create this alignment. This is, I think, what's important.
So it's definitely communication, clear communication. That's what I'm hearing from it. Again, be approachable, be there as a founder, share what worked and what you want to see replicate on a larger scale between all the teams pulling together, no?
Agreed. Share your experience from the hustle phase, and then when your team is hustling, they remember how you solved it.
So I love unconventional things. Do you have an unconventional go-to-market tactic that can deliver surprising ROI?
Unconventional. I have something
I love that
controversial. So what I tried out, it was not surprisingly ROI, but I won customer through it. Is I call it the hidden agenda reverse selling. But I need to frame it properly.
Hidden agenda reverse selling. Okay, I'm curious.
Exactly, and it mostly works in the B2B kind of software space, where everyone is selling to everyone, kind of. And if you have a product and you have your leads, your targets, and then you go and just book a demo and like play the interested guy, or maybe we could use your software. You pretend to be the buyer, And and so, and then important is you need to make it hard. You need to make it, yeah, I am comparing other tools, and you need to make it for the other salesperson, see it as a training for the other one, make it difficult, so their brain is like seeing this as a more valuable deal when they do put more effort in there. It's like a psychological trick. So don't be like, oh, I love your product, I'm gonna buy it. Don't make it easy, make it difficult. Do a lot of objections, and they want to really like give their best to sell. And then at the end be like, oh yeah, we also like a growing startup, and I'm always happy to exchange and learn from each other. So and you try at the end in the last 5 minutes to the reverse pitch and maybe get an intro to their kind of target person, what you want. And that is, so it works for outbound when you book the demo, but it also works for inbound, because I always get also these emails of like some people want to sell me, so I sometimes book a call and then try selling if it's in the same space. But it is, because it needs to be, you need to distinguish, because it can be morally difficult. I think it is then okay if you know your own product will help them, because then your intention is good again, and then it's okay. Then it's, I think, okay, because otherwise I'm a big honesty fan also in sales. It sounds weird because people think sales and honesty doesn't fit, but it should fit together. And if you do it honestly, you only do it when you know you're definitely, your product can help the customer. Then I think it's fine to do it.
Yeah, when you know they definitely could benefit from it. Interesting.
But very, very careful about that.
All right. And okay, my last question. Are there, or is there, go-to-market decision you wish you had done differently, and why?
I think less this simple ICP based, firmographics based mass outreach. I think now I wish I would have like gone earlier to like more effectiveness in like the signal based outreach, really to really know when your potential customer really has a pain, how you can help them, and not doing like this mass outreach and just like hope like somebody is replying. And I think this hope based go to market is something doesn't work. When you look then back at the campaigns you did, I think that's a good thing, because I think it's always a good trick to go back to the campaigns you did at the beginning, and when you read then the messages, you should feel a little bit embarrassed how bad you were back in the days. That's a good sign, because like also on a personal level, when you look back how you were for a person 5 years ago, I hope you feel a little bit ashamed or embarrassed a little bit, because then you grow, like you did something better, you evolved. And I think this also is for the sales campaigns true. But I wish I would have done like not as just like salesy mass outreach, to be like more empathetic and to try to reach the right person at the right time. And I think also there's a whole risk of like you annoy people, you flood their inboxes, you also burn a lot of leads. Some people are probably, I had the other day like these bad examples, when I get these outreach messages from like guys who want to sell me their sales tool or their new signaling tool. And then I always read these messages, because I want to get also inspired, like how good like first messages are. So I read them carefully, and sometimes I write even back like, hey, thank you, and not interested, but good luck and stuff. And then I get 2 days later the follow-up email, and there was like no automation in that. So, and then I was like, guys, that's so annoying. Like you just spam the emails out there and there's no intelligence behind it. And then I get frustrated. And when you experience that, like you don't want to be that guy who's annoying to other people like that. And that's when I look back, like be more mindful about people's time and attention, and really try to find a spot when you can help them when they have the intent.
Fantastic. Tim, it's been great listening to your insights. There's countless, I think, really great gems of advice in there for people who are, thinking about developing their first go-to-market strategy, or indeed evolving from where they are currently and improving what they're doing. So thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us. Just to sort of round things out, if our listeners want to learn more about your thinking around go-to-market or follow your insights, where can they do that?
First of all, Negula, thank you. Really always happy to talk to you. Appreciate it.
Thank you as well.
For the invitation. And where can people find me? I have to admit, in terms of like this branding, personal branding, I'm really a bad example how to do it. I'm not doing it at all. So, but I think still the best way to reach me, just send me a message on LinkedIn. I always prefer like a little coffee chat, digitally or physically. That's I think the way I prefer. And happy to get messages and have a chat about it.
All right, we're going to add then your
you.
LinkedIn to the show notes so people can connect with you through that. And also another thing for you, anyone who's listening, we have a growing resource library that is free. You just have to subscribe, and with every single episode, our guest speakers are also contributing with some framework or checklist or something that they had learned throughout their journey, so that you can also use that to your advantage. So make sure you subscribe to the resource library. Yeah. Link will also be in the show notes.